The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. All things came to be through him, and without him nothing came to be. What came to be through him was life, and this life was the light of the human race. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony to testify to the light, so that all might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to testify to the light. The true light, which enlightens everyone, was coming into the world. He was in the world, and the world came to be through him, but the world did not know him. He came to what was his own, but his own people did not accept him. But to those who did accept him, he gave power to become children of God, to those who believe in his name, who were born not by natural generation, nor by human choice, nor by a man's decision, but of God. And the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. And we saw his glory, the glory as of the Father's only Son, full of grace and truth. John testified to him and cried out, saying, "This was he of whom I said, 'The one who is coming after me ranks ahead of me, because he existed before me.' From his fullness we have all received grace in place of grace, because while the law was given through Moses, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. No one has ever seen God. The only Son, God, who is at the Father's side, has revealed him." The Gospel of the Lord.
Well, my brothers and sisters, let me say it again. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, Bob.
Just can't seem to say that enough. We wait for it for so long. Every year at Christmas, I try to read something, some literature, some fiction that has a Christmas story in it. And you know, there's not as many stories around as you might think, at least in print. Every year I usually just break down and read A Christmas Carol again by Charles Dickens. But I was determined this year to find a new story. And so I got my Kindle out and I went browsing and I found this anthology. It's probably like 2,000 pages in print, every Christmas story ever written. And I downloaded it for 99 cents. Not a lot of great stories in there. But I did find one gem which I had never heard of before. And my polling people at Masses this past couple of days, I found out that nobody's heard of it before. Maybe somebody here, maybe you, Lynette, you're an English teacher. You're going to raise your hand no matter what now, right? Have you ever heard of The Holy Night by Selma Lagerlöf? Okay, that makes it unanimous. But 100 years ago, this Swedish author won the Nobel Prize for Literature, and she did write a classic, The Holy Night. It takes place, of course, Christmas night. And as the story begins, we don't know it, but we find out that it's St. Joseph who is prowling around the Bethlehem countryside looking for help to start a fire. Mary and Jesus are back in the stable, and there's no way he can start a fire. And so he comes upon a shepherd watching his flock. And this is not a very friendly shepherd. This is an old curmudgeon, very suspicious and leery of strangers. So when Joseph hails him, the first instinct the shepherd has and acts upon is to sick his 3 dogs on him. The dogs stand up, and Joseph can see their hair standing on end. They're getting their hackles up. They try to bark, they try to growl, but nothing comes out of their mouths. And when they attack Joseph, one has his mouth around his arm, another has a mouth around his leg, the third has a mouth around his neck. And try as they might, they can't clamp down. And so the shepherd's really getting very fearful. Now, between the shepherd and Joseph is the whole flock of sheep, and there's no way Joseph can seem to get around or through them. So he has a heavenly inspiration. He says, "I'll go on top of them." And so he steps up miraculously and walks on the backs of the sheep without harming them. And so the shepherd's really getting nervous now as he sees Joseph coming, so he picks up his club that he has to fend off wolves. It's got spikes on the end, and he hurls it at Joseph, and it's heading right for him. But again, an unseen hand miraculously guides the club away. And so Joseph steps down off the back of the sheep, and he says, "Shepherd, sir, I hate to bother you, but my wife just had a baby, and we're basically in a barn, and there's no way I could make a fire. I was wondering if I could borrow some of your coals." And so the shepherd sees that Joseph doesn't have a shovel or a pail, and he doesn't offer him one. He says, "Well, if you can find a way to take them, you're welcome to them." Ha ha ha. But Joseph, he leans in, puts his bare hands on the red-hot coals, and puts them into his cloak, into his mantle, without his hands getting burned or the cloak. And as he thanks the shepherd and is on his way, the shepherd says, "Wait a second. Who are you, and what is this night, that all things show you such compassion?" And Joseph says to him, "If you cannot see it, then I cannot explain it." And so the shepherd wants to come and see, and he says, "Can I follow you? Can I meet the rest of your family?" And Joseph says, "Of course." So as they come to the manger scene, when the shepherd looks at Jesus and Mary and sees the little baby shivering, he reaches into his sack and he pulls out a sheepskin and says, "Wrap this around the baby, lest he catch cold." And that's when the shepherd's heart is really moved and he is converted. And that's when not only is his heart open, but the sky is open, and the heavenly host of angels sing, "Glory to God in the highest, and peace to his people on earth." Now, we didn't hear that for the gospel reading. We had John's beautiful prologue about the Word becoming flesh. The reading about the shepherds is the reading for midnight mass, or mass during the night. So I tried to give that to you. Get 2 for 1 today. His eyes were open, as Selma Lagerlof says, and the shepherd could see what he could not see before. He could hear what he could not hear before. And that is the call of all Christians, and all peoples really, is to see below the surface and the mere material and physical, to the reality of the spiritual, as the shepherd did, especially to who Jesus is. As John says so well in the prologue, he is God come in human flesh. My friends, if we don't get below the surface of the mere visible, material, and physical, then we miss most of reality. And that's very hard for the modern mind to understand. But compare it to this. It's like looking at an iceberg and never delving below the surface. Because oceanographers will tell us that 9/10 of the iceberg is below the surface, and we only see 1/10 of what is above. And so faith helps us to go below the surface of the merely visible, to the soul of things, to the spiritual reality behind them. This is not popular today, but it is so necessary. To not do this is to miss the truth of who we are and why God put us here. We are children of God, first and foremost. That is our identity. And we are here to share his love and help one another get to heaven. So many people today find it hard to say they believe in these things, that they believe in what they cannot see. You hear this a lot. "Well, you know, I believe in science. I only believe in what I can see and prove scientifically." And yet, with a little prodding, we find out that nobody really thinks that way. When somebody says that to you, try this on for size. Ask them, do they love anybody? Do they believe in love? Perish the thought of the person who says no. Who is going to deny the existence of love? And yet, as soon as they say they believe in love, ask them, prove that love exists. Show it to me. I want to see it. Where is love? It's like that song from the musical Oliver. Where is love? Does it fall from stars above? See, I saved the singing for the last homily of the 5 this past couple of days. Where is love? Does it fall from stars above? Well, in a sense it does, because it comes from heaven above. God is the source of all love. And that love came down from heaven and put on a human face so we could see it, could see Him who is love incarnate, love in the flesh. And only with His help can we spread that love around and help one another get to heaven. Heaven shines its light on earth. Christ is the light of the world who breaks through what is sometimes a thick darkness in the world to light our way to heaven. He wants His light to shine through each one of us to make the world brighter. Like Martin Luther King Jr., my brothers and sisters, I have a dream. Every year at Christmas time, that dream is rekindled because I see so many folks come to celebrate Christmas in the best possible way, to celebrate the Mass together. Now I know you look around and you say, where's the capacity crowd today, Father? Well, let me let you in on a little secret. Christmas really is celebrated now on Christmas Eve in the church. Because if you were here at the 4 o'clock Mass yesterday, you would see people sitting on the light fixtures. Really, people come out in droves. We had a 4 o'clock Mass that was packed at St. Philip. The upstairs was packed. The downstairs was packed. For the 3rd year in a row, we had a live audio-visual feed to the overflow crowd that was downstairs. So I was a television star last night. And we had good numbers at the 6 o'clock, and we had decent numbers at the Mass at 10:30. And you're here. And I say to myself, wouldn't it be wonderful if everybody who answered the call to encounter Jesus in word and in sacrament at Mass came each and every week of the year and put our lights together and let the light of Christ shine through each one of us. That is my dream. That is my vision. Now, if you're one of the folks who maybe doesn't come to Mass every week, maybe you come at Christmas, at Easter, or sporadically, let me rest assured, let me assure you that I'm not going to yell at you. I drag out poor old Father Ben every year. He was a curate in my parish in Marlborough when I was a kid, when I was an altar server. He was beloved. He was an energetic young priest, gregarious, but his Achilles heel was this. At Christmas, when he would see the throngs come out like yesterday, he couldn't resist the urge to lay people out in the lavender and yell at them. And when I was an altar server, I would even sit there and say, Father, what are you doing? You should be grateful that they're there. You should be encouraging to keep it up. Christmas always comes at the end of the year. And as I say every year, if 2015 hasn't been your year to be part of your faith community, then 2016 can be. And so I encourage us, if you've come home for Christmas, to stay home and to reclaim this as your spiritual home. I vowed I would never do a Father Ben. You know, no man is a failure. He can always serve as a bad example. Father Ben was a good example in so many ways, but in that sense, he was a bad example, and I learned from him. How much brighter our world would be, and how much clearer the path to heaven if that dream was a reality. We have to draw closer to the light that is Christ, individually and together. This God-made man who made and continues to make all the difference in our world. Some people can get very cynical and they can say, 2,000 years of Christianity, where has it got us? Well, tremble at the thought of what the world would be like without Christ's coming. I've put this on the shelf the past couple of years, but I love to share a prose poem, a very famous one, at Christmas time, and I will end with this. It helps us understand how Christ made and makes all the difference in our world. It's called One Solitary Life. He was born in an obscure village. He worked in a carpenter shop until he was 30. He then became an itinerant preacher. He never held an office. He never had a family or owned a house. He didn't go to college. He had no credentials but himself. 20 centuries have come and gone, and today he is the central figure of the human race. All the armies that ever marched, all the navies that ever sailed, all the parliaments that ever sat, and all the kings that ever reigned have not affected the life of man on this earth as much as that one solitary life. His one life encourages us to not remain solitary, but to band together. So let's get together to let Jesus continue to change us and the world for the better, so we can spend eternity together with him in the world to come. Merry Christmas again, my friends.